who is Dane Brugler's top fantasy football sleeper in the 2025 draft. That and more today on the couch. Happy to be joined by Dane Brugler, author of The Beast, draft expert titan. So we need to know in the fantasy football world, thanks for spending time with us, who's your number one sleeper for fantasy football in this draft?
I'm gonna go. It's always tough because again, landing spot matters so much, and opportunity. Like I wouldn't have said Bucky Irving last year, but he went to a good situation, and so that matters. But these running backs, there's so many of them, and I think everyone's got their own favorites. For me, Jordan James from Oregon is kind of like that. That's my guy. Hopefully he goes to a good spot. Like I think he's going to be someone that isn't going to break off a ton of big runs, but he's just consistently going to move the chains, going to get some touches inside when they're in the red zone because he's a no nonsense guy. He's not going to dance. He's not going to make things harder than they need to be. He's going to understand the blocking. He's going to hit it, and he's going to grind it out until he gets positive yardage. So just a guy that consistently gets more than he should. That sums up Jordan James. And so, again, if you're looking for those 60-yard runs, he's not going to get them, but he's going to get 6 consistently. And I think that he will get plenty of opportunities when you get close to that goal line, provided he goes to a situation where, there's a path to getting on the field. But if he does, I think Jordan James will outplay where he's drafted.
Yeah, I think that you hit on something important that I've been talking about for years, that where fantasy football disconnects from the NFL is coaches. I call it catnip for coaches. They love assignment sound running backs. Like we don't value that as much. Like you said, we want 60-yard runs. We want spectacular moves in the open field and things like that, backwards hurdles. But assignment sound football, and that's why certain running backs that might not jump out at us on tape do to the college ranks. Okay, let's step through some stuff.
It's a trust factor, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Go ahead.
If a coach thinks that you can, like if a coach is worried that you might get a -2 because there's a chance you might get a +20, like it's a team or coaches would not, I mean, just generally speaking, most coaches would rather have the guy that's consistently getting you +4, +5, +4.5 over the guy that's -2, 1, and then might break off a 20-yarder. It's just it's a trust factor that I think, I want to speak for every single coach, but for most coaches, they want guys they know are not going to fumble, they're going to be assignment sound, and they're going to consistently get what is blocked for them and plus more. And that's something that's not always flashy, but you know what? That's okay. You can win with the guy that leads the league in doubles.
Yeah, absolutely. It's why maybe again, you mentioned Bucky Irving, Kyron Williams is another one. Didn't have great measurables, but they do what coaches want. Okay, let's start with quarterbacks. There's no mystery about number one. There's no mystery about who the number one quarterback is. Maybe there's a little mystery about number 2, but I think there's a lot of mystery about how number 2, number 3, number 4 are going to go off the board. So basically, Dane, this is like a 2-part question for each one of these guys. Part 1 is about where do you think they'll go off the board, maybe a team or two. And then the second part is, but where do you think they should go off the board, like if the scouting is accurate? So let's start with Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty consistent with just how I view Shedeur Sanders. I think for whatever reason, it's become you either love him or hate him, and I'm here to say it's okay to just like him. You don't have to love him. You don't have to be. I'm all the way out on Shedeur. You don't have to be one extreme or the other. It's okay to say, you know what, I like him, but there are certainly things about his profile that worry me for that transition to the next level, and so. I've always had him kind of that late first, early second round range. That's kind of where I would feel comfortable drafting a player like that. And some people are going to say, well, if you like him, you like him. Like take him in a top 5 if you think. But you have to really account for the value, and because it's not just if you miss on a player and the percentages of if he hits or not, but if you're the Browns, for example, you're also passing on, say, Travis Hunter at number 2. And so it's not just, oh, well, you hit on the quarterback or you didn't. You have to play the value game. And so if you're not totally in love with the quarterback, then you have to go, in my opinion, you have to go with the best player, and that's Travis Hunter. And then you figure out, okay, do I have a chance to trade back in to go get a Shador Sanders later? What's my next option at quarterback? Is there a big gap between 2 and 3? And so you play through all these scenarios, and it's really interesting. But I think that with Shador, he should go somewhere late 1, early 2. Where he will go, man, it's tough because I don't think he goes like. There's always a chance he could go 3. I don't think he goes 2. There's always a chance he could go 3, and the biggest reason is ownership. That's when we talk about
Mm,
quarterbacks in the top
yeah.
10. A lot of times, ownership is driving those conversations. So you can't rule it out at 3. Um, and then, okay, let's just say he gets past 3. I don't think the Saints take him at 9. And then we're talking back half of round 1 somewhere. Is it the Steelers, at 21? Is it, a team like the Giants or Browns trading back into the round 1 to get Shador? I mean, it really becomes, if he gets past 3, we're on Shador watch. It's going to be a complete wild card on draft night, which honestly, bring the chaos. I'm here for it. I mean, I think it's going to be fun to see just, the where he could go, the possible trades and all
Mhm.
that. So I think that's probably the most likely is Shador goes somewhere in the back half of round 1, and it probably ends up being some type of trade situation.
Yeah, and like I like how you set that up. And it's the Saints. There was just that piece of information. It's April. It's lying season about Derek Carr's shoulder, which wasn't new
Right.
information. Now, does that mean they're definitely going to take a quarterback, or is that a smokescreen? So turning the page. Well, let me ask you. There's so many things I want to ask you. Are we making too much? Because the other blue chip player is Abdul Carter. And then there's the
Mhm.
poor Patriots who Joe Milton won week 18. So now the Patriots are picking at number 4. So unless Shedeur Sanders goes number 3, like, are we making too much of that cliff from the 3rd to the 4th best player in this draft?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that it's just relative to most years, it's just not a great year to be picking in that 4 to 12 range. Like they're still good players, but it just a top 10 pick in this draft means something a little bit different than a top 10 pick in other drafts. I mean, you think about some of the like Brock Bowers wasn't a top 10 pick. Micah Parsons wasn't a top 10 pick. Like, I mean, you go the past 5, 6 years, not every year, but most years, the top 10, you feel like you're getting a true top 10 player. And this year, it's just not like that. And that's why if I'm the Browns, in most years, I think the Browns would love to trade back and get more draft assets, pick up draft capital, especially for next year. But this draft, is it really worth another second round pick to trade back to 7 or whatever they would trade back to when you lose out on one of those top 2 players and are stuck with whatever's left? And they're again still good players, whether it's a Tyler Warren or take your whatever defensive player out of the grab bag that you like the most. He's still a potentially good player, but the risk involved drops and you just don't feel as great. Now, again, I think there's a lot of randomness in the draft. There's no doubt about it, but there's still value in scouting and understanding the value of where to pick and where the sweet spot will be. And so you want one of those picks at the top, and it does complicate things this year when you try to project like a mock draft. It's tough because that between picks like 6 and 20, like there's just going to be so many differing opinions about who the order they should come off the board. And that's going to make for a lot of fun on draft night.
Yeah, I love it. Unpredictable is better for us, even just like reacting in the moment, right? So let's go back to
Oh, yeah.
that second tier quarterback conversation. Big gaps, even bigger than I think with Sanders in how people view Jalen Milroe. So same question, like where do you think he's going to go off the board? Where do you think he should go off the board?
So me personally, I was high on Milrow early and then it kind of faded late just because, and that's the thing, like when you scout during the season, like I do, like it's just, it's you have to just react to what is on the film and the Wisconsin tape, the Georgia tape. So by mid-October, I'm writing articles that say, "Hey, is Jalen Milroe a dark horse QB1 for this draft?" Because he was terrific over the first 6 games of the year. But then, they start to backslide a little bit. The Oklahoma game, what do you do with that? What he did against Michigan, that it's just tough when he's not making the right reads. It's not looking consistent. The mechanics are all over the place. But at the same time, I still really like Jalen Milroe because of the dynamic athleticism, how smart he is, and he's got a rocket arm. So in a lot of ways, it's like, all right, this is a rocket fueled Jalen Hurts who just needs a lot of development as a passer. And there's no guarantee he'll ever get there. But for me, I like him as a top 75 pick, late 2, early 3, love to develop him in that range. But I think he's going to go earlier than that. I think somewhere in the top 50, maybe the top 40. I reported 2 weeks ago how he accepted his invite to the draft. And that, I think a lot of people caught people off guard with, oh, okay, well, if he's invited to the draft, does it mean he's going first round? And I don't necessarily think that. I mean, I think if you're the NFL, it's great for you. You're putting together a TV product, and on Friday night, you'll have somebody that's able to go across the stage and get the crowd riled up and all that. So I don't think it's any. He's not getting a promise that he's going in the first round by any means, but I do think he probably feels good. He's going top 40, top 50.
Yeah, that's who I want my Steelers to take. That's who I think. I like with Milroe. What I just get stuck, Dane, on how Bill O'Brien told him, "You're not a quarterback,"
Mm.
and he had to, much like Jalen Hurts, he had to keep persevering in the face of the universe telling him, "You're not good enough. You're wasting your time." And I think that is prepared him for, much like with Jalen Hurts and what he had to go through, for what's to come and how he's going to get the most out of himself. But we'll see. Okay, last quarterback,
Yeah.
and we let's talk about the someone whose name has become a lot more prominent as we've gotten through the draft season, Jackson Dart.
Yeah, and Dart, I think you understand why he is so well liked. I mean, he is a good sized passer. The production's off the charts, and especially when you look at like what Bo Nix did this past year. I think Dart's going to get that Bo Nix bump where it's all right. He's a 4-year starter at 2 different places. The competitiveness is off the charts. The way he's wired, the leadership, the intangibles, coaches love what Jackson Dart has to offer. But I think when you break down the tape and you're saying, okay, he's not making full field progressions consistently, he's not getting to that backside read. It's a lot of one read, drop my eyes. And, it's just the offense. And you don't blame Lane Kiffin for that. He put together a really explosive offense to get the most out of the quarterback and really give defenses fits. But in terms of projecting him to the next level, Jackson Dart, it's not that he can't do some of these things, it's that he wasn't asked to do it at the college level. And so you have to really examine, all right, how long before we feel like he can adapt to what he's asked to do in the NFL and get on the field, and can he do it consistently? And so there's a big projection there. Now, for some teams, it's just like, you know what, let's throw a dart for, pardon the pun, but
Yeah.
let's see what we have. And he checks a lot of the boxes on paper in terms of competitiveness, he's a smart guy, like has the tools, but how long realistically until he can get on the field and really compete for to be number 1 on our depth chart? And that's where I think the disconnect is from team to team. Teams really look at it differently. Some teams are a little more optimistic. Other teams are like, this is going to take too long. It's not. It's just it's too much of a risk, too much of a projection for us with Jackson Dart. So that's where it becomes really difficult to project him. I would love to draft Jackson Dart in the second round, develop him at his own pace, and see what we have. But we're mid second round, he's probably not going to last that long. Good chance he could go in the first. Good chance he doesn't get past the Browns at 33, the Giants at 34. So and that's where the quarterback tax comes in, and you have to take him a little bit earlier than you normally would. But it makes for another fascinating quarterback evaluation, and hopefully he goes to a spot where he's not going to be pushed into starting before he's ready. Like Cleveland. Flacco, Kenny Pickett, like obviously they can handle the starting duties, but at some point you figure Jackson Dart might be thrust into getting on the field, and I'm just not sure he'd be ready at that point. So it does make for some interesting fits, and I can't wait to see it all play out on draft night.
Yeah, you're right that one of the things that makes this specific part of the draft conversation interesting is they're so different. These three quarterbacks are so different from each other, but it's the same group of teams that need a quarterback. So, which route, which type of player, and then like you said, the story really starts with how are they going to develop them. And as counterintuitive as it
Hmm.
seems, like you said, some of these quarterbacks might have a better chance, especially Milroe and Dart, as a second round pick than as a first round pick. I think it used to be, Dane, especially under the new CBA, this actually makes sense. Well, if a team doesn't feel motivated enough to take a quarterback in the first round, then he probably doesn't have the stuff. Like if he had the stuff,
Yes,
then someone would feel compelled
he'd
to
go
take him in
first
the
round.
first round. Right. But if you go in the first round in this day and age, they force you onto the field too early. Anthony Richardson, they force you onto
Hmm.
the field so early that it can actually be bad for your development. And a second round quarterback might, like that same quarterback as a second round pick, might have a better chance to hit because there isn't going to be so much expectations and such a rush to get them on the field, which is actually what some of these guys need. So
Hmm.
it's going to be unbelievably fascinating to see where these guys go and who. And go ahead.
Well, I said this is probably the first time, like it's over the last like 5, 6, 7 years. Only once have we seen more day two quarterbacks than first round quarterbacks, and that was the Kenny Pickett year. This I think will be more similar to the Kenny Pickett year, where maybe we have more day two quarterbacks and than first round. Because I mean, you're exactly right. If you're good enough, though, then teams going to take you in the first round. But this year, I think teams might have the attitude that we like these guys, don't love them, and if we can get one on day two, then that's the direction we should go. And it's also you're more inclined to move on from a second rounder as opposed to a first rounder
Right.
quicker than you should. If you come to a point where it's just like, all right, he doesn't have it. We have a chance to upgrade. Let's go do it. As opposed to, well, we drafted him in the first round. We got to give him at least another year. Like there's a, whether it should be like that or it shouldn't. There does feel like there's that type of attitude when you break it up between first rounders and second rounders at the position.
Okay, and again, when we talk about the draft, there's always two conversations going on. There's what we think or the conclusions we've come to, but then there's also gauging the NFL and predicting or at
Hmm.
least getting people familiar with the range of possibilities. So that's what makes me curious, Dane. Tell me, first of all, who is a player that, based on how they are covered in the media, that you are whether overrated or underrated, that you see how their stock is depicted in the media, and you're saying no, I disagree pretty strongly.
At what position?
Just anybody, whoever comes to mind when I say, like, you're watching how they're covered in the media and you're thinking about like your own personal evaluation, you're like, yeah, I'm definitely out of step with how this player is being depicted, positive or negative.
Yeah, I mean, I think I used to think that way about Tyler Shuck. I mean, because Tyler Shuck for me has kind of always been that um, right around like the 50th pick, like a 50 on my board, and that was going into Senior Bowl. Um, I wrote my Senior Bowl preview. Hey, Tyler Shuck, this is his chance to really show, hey, he could be quarterback 3, quarterback 4 in this draft. And I think it's been gradual that a lot of people have kind of caught up to that, but sometimes even more so than but I'm kind of still right around 50. If I have a chance to draft Tyler Shuck there, that's where I would. NFL teams love Shuck. There's a lot of teams that are high on Tyler Shuck, so it won't be surprising at all when he's a top 40 pick. At receiver, I mean, there's definitely a couple of these receivers that maybe I'm not as high on as others. Um, Savion Williams, the receiver from TCU, I think because like it looks great. He's every bit of 6'4", 220 pounds, really good athlete. and you just watch the highlights and you understand the appeal. I mean, he can run a lot of wildcat, but it's like, okay, what am I drafting? What position am I drafting? Is it a receiver or is this a gadget joker running back? Because there's so many manufactured touches on his tape that I would feel like I have to really alter my offense unless I'm looking for that specific role. I'm gonna have to alter my offense to how I'm going to accommodate him fitting and maximizing what he can do. And I don't think he's special enough necessarily for me to do that and feel like I'm getting bang for my buck. So Savion Williams, I like. I think somewhere probably like early fourth, like once we get to day three, like I understand taking a chance on him because I think he can play a little bit outside and on fades and some of those jump balls he can be a really productive player. But if I'm drafting him top 100, I want him to be a starter, and I'm just not sure just can't get there with him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the name Cordero Patterson comes up a lot when we're talking about Williams. Although Patterson was a first round pick, and like you said, Williams fourth round pick, maybe third round pick. Certainly will be an interesting guy to watch as the NFL has changed a little bit since Patterson came in, and Patterson has at least shown that there was something there with the longevity in his career. And hey, kick returns are going to be more important than ever now. Okay,
Hmm.
I want to ask you also. Um, you spend a lot of time with these players. I mean, you spend a lot of time watching them and studying them. Who's somebody from this class? It doesn't necessarily have to be one of the highest rated guys. Who's somebody that's going to stick with you? Someone that's really memorable. Someone that when you watch them, someone that whenever you were putting together a scouting profile, really was memorable for you.
Well, I don't know if you mean on the field or off the field, just to answer the question, like someone that like their story just really grabbed me was Siobhan Ravel, the corner from East Carolina. Just everything that he's had to overcome, the mental toughness, I mean, he working at Amazon overnight just to make ends meet, not knowing what his football future was, works a 7 p.m. to 4 a.m. shift, and a couple hours later, he's at a tryout at ECU and is able to earn a scholarship. And next thing you know, it's amazing 2023 season, and he's on the path to be a first round pick, and then has an ACL injury a month into the 2024 season. And it's like, all right, well, how much adversity can this guy encounter? But just talking to him and understanding where his mind is and how he's like, I mean, I know football is my future. I know I'm going to be an NFL player. So it's just a minor setback. And so just understanding where his mindset is and his story has been pretty cool. Really like those types of guys that just overcome. And just it's something that I think really speaks to his character and just his will, passion for the game. So that would definitely be one. Who else? I'll bring it back to offense. I mentioned Jordan James earlier, but he'd be one of those.
Yeah.
A fun story with him. His junior year in high school, he was in a jet skiing accident and didn't have a PCL in his knee. So like they wanted him to have surgery, kind of shut it down. He didn't want to do it. The junior year, that was the big year, right? Where you're the recruiting, and he knew they had a good team that year. So he played through it the entire year and was an All-American, All-State, led his team to the state championship, and then a few days after the state championship, had the surgery to repair the knee. So again, you talk about a guy that then that's something that stuck with me. Like wanted to win badly enough where he's going to play through the injury, take that chance. Any pain, any of that, you know what? It doesn't matter. We have a chance to go win. I have a chance to have a really do something special here as my junior year. Let's go do it. And so to block out all the pain and everything else to go do it, really that sticks with you when you see that resolve in a player.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I always tell people, your athletic subscription is worth it to get the beast. And it's worth it to get the beast because of the background. And what you do, Dane, is so essential and valuable. We talk about it every year that we get together at this time of year because it humanizes the players. But I
Mhm.
think you also point out that it has scouting value. I mean, it's not just human interest
Yeah.
information. It actually informs exactly what does this player really represent when you're adding him to your organization, when you're putting him on the field. And it's so immersive, and there's so much. I have my Dane Brugler fun facts. The Bloom 100 will come out later this week. A lot of the players have this little Dane Brugler fun fact, like Luther Burden led his basketball team to the state championship when he was a sophomore. Like stuff like that. Like
Right, right.
Emeka Buka got a tryout for the junior national Nigerian soccer team because he played soccer in the summers in Germany. Like this stuff is just so fascinating. What I want to know is, how do you get all of this information? Because you have to get to trust. Like I know this isn't just stuff you can Google and find. How do you get all of this very personal information? It makes me feel like I know the player, or I've met his family after I read what you write about them.
Yeah, and I think that's the definitely the main goal is there's so many puzzle pieces out there, and it's my job to collect all the puzzle pieces and then put it together so it's giving the reader a more clear picture of who this player is in person and what type of person these guys are. Yeah, I think so. It's a lot of talking to people. That's really what it comes down to, and sometimes it's talking to a scout and they kind of tip me off about we're talking about a player and the scout might say, oh yeah, by the way, this and this. Like a great example is in this class, Nazir Stackhouse, the defensive tackle from Georgia. Scout told me, "Oh, by the way, he has narcolepsy too." I was like, "Wait, what?" Yeah, like I'd never heard that with a player before. Like
Hmm.
he had always struggled with
Mhm.
wanting to take naps and things growing up. At Georgia, he was officially diagnosed with that, and there were times in meeting rooms where he would doze off, or in during games even where he would want to take a little bit of a nap and just take a breather. And so it's something that he battles, and it's just so fascinating to find out something like that, which you don't encounter very often. And sometimes, a lot of times, it's just talking to the player. Really connecting with players to, because I want to really help them tell their story to everybody else. This is their opportunity. Bilhao Kone from Western Michigan. He was sent to live in Africa for the first 5 years of his life because his family couldn't make ends meet in the States, and so that shaped his life. And before he came back to America and had to convince his mom to play football, and he was homeless at one point, and the different steps he's taken along the way to get to this point where he's going to be a mid-round pick and a really talented corner. Jamari Caldwell from Oregon, defensive tackle. I've heard of plenty of JUCO guys, plenty of walk-on guys. Caldwell is one of the few who was a walk-on at a JUCO, but it just says how badly he wanted to play
Oh,
football, and he was able to turn that into a scholarship at Houston. Was able to turn that into a scholarship and NIL money at Oregon, and now he's an older prospect, but he's a good player. And so probably somewhere early day three, a team's going to get a pretty good player with Jamari Caldwell.
yeah, and one of the themes in all these stories is belief in self, and not just belief in self, because all these players have networks, support networks, and families, communities, football programs. But that belief in self is an essential part of every single one of these stories. Every single one of these players it's been tested. Their faith in themselves has been tested, and it's one of the reasons it's such an amazing release of emotional energy. I feel like we're football clinicians, and this player went to this team, project them in this scheme, they used this pick, they made this trade. But this is the culmination of a lifetime. you know this is a culmination of decades for all of these people. And I think that's actually the headline, the big story of the draft. And I love the way the Beast really acknowledges that, but enhances that for all of us.
Yeah, try
Last
to
football
celebrate it.
question.
Yeah,
Exactly. Celebrate human beings and what they can
yeah,
accomplish together, because none of these players did it by themselves. And what they can accomplish with
right.
a mindset, it's again, it's a spiritual thing. It's not just a physical measurables thing. It's not just a football X's and O's thing. Last football question, and then we'll do a quick off the rails because Dane Brugler is in demand, folks. We're lucky to get this time with him. If your organization, Dane, drafted, and I know you're a Cleveland fan, so maybe this is going to be right there, Travis Hunter. If you were the one making the plan for Travis Hunter, what would your plan be for how to use him in the NFL?
Strictly in general terms, I would play him primarily as a corner. That'd be his primary position, and then I would have 25-ish plays a game and try to get him 8 to 10 touches on offense. And that's, to me, theoretically, it is probably the best way to go, the easiest way to go. But with that said, I think a team like the Browns, for example, who just need an injection of life on offense. They need someone that's going to help put points on the scoreboard. They were dead last, 32nd in the league last year in offensive scoring, dead last in third down conversions. So if I'm the Browns, I'm looking at it like, all right, well, this is a premier talent, dynamic athlete. The ball instincts are phenomenal. So yeah, I think if he reaches his full ceiling on defense, he could probably be a top 3 corner in the league. But what's the value? Is the value better for us if he reaches his full potential on offense and he's, say, a top 10 receiver in the league, and what that means for us in terms of winning football games? So I think it really is a case by case basis about just our personnel, what's best for our team. And part of it too is just understanding what the player wants as well. Like, we know he wants to play both ways. I get it. But if you really had to twist his arm and say, all right, which way do you prefer? Which way would he lean? I would guess offense, but I think that's something that teams, the Browns, the Giants, maybe the Patriots, the teams that are actually have a chance at drafting him, just have to have a plan in place to understand, look, this is what he wants to do. This is what we think we can do with him. But I think the Browns, if I were the Browns and he's on the clock, or if he's on the board at number 2, I would make sure he's on the board at number 3. I think they would get the best player in the draft if they take him at 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to watch him play. I'm sure that even though the draft is, you do such an amazing job, outstanding job, um, giving us all, like, getting us in the loop at all the stuff. But I know it's going to be a relief as I send you on your way. One last off the rails non-football question: as after the draft is over and your life kind of gets back to be, what are you most looking forward to?
That's a good question. I honestly, it's just getting outside. Like, there's so much, like, I'm stuck in my office for months and months. And look, I live in Northeast Ohio, so it's not like I could really just go outside and enjoy sunshine in February and March. But I can't wait to just get outside. And whether it's, I'm helping coach my daughter's softball team and my son's baseball team. And they're at the age where, it's U10, U8, where, it's still a lot of learning and fundamentals, and being able to help coach and teach those kids is awesome. So I enjoy that. But it's also just like, I can't wait to mow my lawn. I can't wait to do that. I've got over an acre of land here, so I can't wait to do that. I can't wait to, do just things that require me to be outside where it's fresh air, and, you can really just take a deep breath and kind of not have to worry about being inside confined in a little space all the time. That's the main thing for me as I look forward to the month of May and what I have to look forward to.
Yeah, like the kids say, touch grass. Go out and touch some grass. And
That's it.
it's a great pleasure and honor always to get to be joined by Dane Brugler at this time of year, and for all of you all, because that's why we're here. We're here because you all love football, and we want to enhance that love of football. So we appreciate y'all. Double shot of couch this week, coming back with Thor Nystrom later this week, and everybody, the draft will be live Thursday night. Matt Waldman, Bob Harris, Cavalcade of Stars. Get your beast at The Athletic. And as always, stay classy.